Jingle, jingle. Best friends, video games.
Yay!
Yay! Woo! Right. Hello again. We're back with a vengeance, clearly. And we're all ill, apparently, as well.
I'm not ill. I'm fine.
You're not ill? All right, okay. Well, you're so much better than us. Well done.
My superiority is already established.
This is going to take an interesting turn, considering what we're talking about today. My superiority. Today, I'd like to discuss it's something that's sort of making waves really in the gaming community. It is the new design for a character called Quiet in the new Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain game. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with it, or not?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't the audience there.
No, we're having a discussion. Let's discuss. Well, basically, obviously, the character is she's a sniper, I believe, and just to describe the way she's dressed, it's she's wearing a sort of ill-fitting bikini top with these sort of ripped, tatty fishnet tights, combat boots, because obviously she's in a combat situation, with a thong over the top of her tights, and the ever helpful sort of ammunition belt, which, because there aren't actually any clothes to attach the ammunition belt to, I think they're held on by braces. I think she sort of has braces holding a combat.
Shoulder pads.
Yeah. Shoulder pads. 80s power suits and all that kind of stuff. I'm assuming this is supposed to constitute some kind of combat gear. Obviously, it's a bit of an odd design, really. The developer, Kojima, can be quoted. I think he tweeted it, saying something along the lines of, what was it? Oh yes, I wanted my designers to put more eroticism. The word was eroticism into the character, and that was to encourage cosplaying and the figurine sales that they have in conjunction with the game. So basically what he's saying was, well, I say basically what he's saying, what it sounds like he's saying is, let's have more naked women or near to naked women cosplaying, which I suppose is where all the big hoo-has come in. So I was basically wondering if any of you guys had any opinions on it. So we've got Tash, who, like myself, is a lady. Hello. We've got
woman.
we've got Gurdeep, or the king of all cosmos, who has earlier established his superiority over everyone by not being ill, and Arjun, who was with us last week as well.
Hello.
So dive in, guys. Does anyone have anything to say?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a confusing character design to begin with. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Like within the Metal Gear Solid universe, I don't see where this kind of design fits in with like the whole series as a whole. It feels out of place to me in that sense as well.
Well, I've not played much of the Metal Gear Solid series. I've seen you play it a little bit. I have to admit, it doesn't seem like it makes that much sense based on what I've already seen. But I have to admit, I haven't played it. So, maybe if you could just describe a little bit of it to me and why it doesn't make any sense, that'd be brilliant.
Well, I mean, I guess the setting of this game is slightly different from the others, in that it's got a very defined sort of desert setting. I've not played Metal Gear Solid 4, but the other games are variously set during snowstorms, set on oil rigs, oil tankers and ships, and then in a tropical jungle setting, I think. But I mean, the series as a whole, it's just like, it's one of the most critically acclaimed games ever made.
Yeah.
The first one is definitely, people have varying opinions about the rest of the series, but I don't think the game's been put under the spotlight for its portrayals of women before this picture came out.
When you're watching strange videos of sounds really weird. When you're watching strange videos of women in Metal Gear Solid, wasn't
I
there
was watching because this whole controversy reminded me of Metal Gear Solid 1. The female character called Meryl, and there's a bit where you're crawling through some vents and you can look down through the vent and you see Meryl doing exercises. And there's like an Easter egg where if you go away and come back, each time she's doing a different exercise. And by the end of it, the very last exercise, she's doing it with her top off, and just doing it in her bra. So she's doing like press ups, while very underdressed. But I mean, I didn't even find that Easter egg the first time round.
Are you disappointed?
You went especially for that.
I was surprised at the like effort they went to like put in this little bit of titillation. In a game that otherwise was like massively praised for all of the big kind of shifts in gameplay that it brought.
Yeah. I mean, like, what do you think about it, Tash? I mean, do you know much about it, or do you have any opinions on general? I mean, I think this is just a continuation of many sort of character designs, especially for women, which are sort of overtly sexualized. So it's just a continuation for me. But I was wondering if you had anything to say on it, really.
I mean, again, I haven't really played much of Metal Gear Solid, the games. I've seen like Metal Gear Solid 1 because my brother used to have it on PS1, I think. But I did kind of find it a bit. It's obviously like a cliche to have her wearing so little clothing. But I was reading through some of because there was obviously loads of fans defending it.
Yeah.
And they were saying that if you watch the trailer, that she has this sort of stealth suit kind of disappearing over her eyes. So that's, I mean, I can see in a sense, because I think the stealth suit seems to be quite a big thing in the game.
Yeah.
But why does she have to be wearing like an ill-fitting bra and a thong for the stealth suit?
Well, the thing is, she's wearing the thong over her tights as well. I was like, surely that's just uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean?
Like everything about it looks. I mean, it just looks painful. It's going up her bum. the bra.
So Arjun and Gurdeep, have you ever worn a thong over tights?
Who, me? I don't know. No,
you don't know?
So.
Not
How drunk were you on that night?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, I've seen some interesting arguments for the costume. I mean, obviously, I have to point out that obviously it doesn't sound like a lot of us played the games. It's not really about the gameplay, it's literally about the character design. And I mean, there were some people going, "Oh well, it gets hot in the desert. She needs less clothes, so she's more quiet when she's being all stealthy and stuff like that." I'm just like, really? But I mean, the thing is, I mean, like, some people obviously came back, like the hot in the desert argument. Obviously, it conversely gets ridiculously cold at night. So it's just some of them just fall a bit flat, really.
I think. Well, one thing that I've just remembered is one of the kind of key influences for Metal Gear would have been Escape from New York. I mean, and the main character is even named after the main character in Escape from New York. His name's Snake.
All right.
So the game isn't even drawing from like the most highbrow influences. It's drawing from like what is basically a kind of sci-fi action film.
Yeah.
And I've not seen the film recently, but I'm not sure if the film's portrayal of women is particularly, amazing. But somehow we expect the game to have like, I don't know, a more nuanced portrayal of women than maybe what its influences actually are as well.
I think what it's worth noting is Hideo Kojima, the maker of MGS, is very much into being quite subversive,
right?
Yeah.
In what he wants to achieve. So unless it's part of a bigger master plan that he's trying to achieve, it depends on what is the ultimate outcome of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, this whole thing has. I mean, I know you guys know, obviously, but people who may or may not be listening, admittedly, but who might be listening don't know that I've actually been engaged in this very long debate with someone I don't know over this entire thing. And he actually brought up some very good points, because he didn't agree with me that the design was sexist. He was arguing that it's art, and for a group of people to demand that these designs don't exist is basically artistic censorship, and he was against censorship rather than sexism. And obviously, my argument was, well, it's the lack of balance for me anyway. Because I mean, how many times for me, it's not necessarily her design. I mean, I have to say, I think it is in very poor taste. I mean, just looking at it, I don't know, and the comments that, you just said his name and I've forgotten it.
Hideo Kojima.
There you go, Kojima, that's the one. I knew it was something like that. I was thinking Kideo, so I'll put his names together, basically. The fact that Kojima said that he was doing it in order to encourage cosplay, to me, and this is where it sort of becomes much bigger than just the game, for me anyway, because you've got someone who's very high up in the development process, who has a lot of control and a lot of say over what ultimately goes out. And he said, I want more eroticism, and it was the fact that he used the word eroticism, which doesn't, I mean, it might have been lost in translation, because he did then retract that and say, no, I meant sexy. To me, they are two very separate things. But to say, I want more eroticism, and it's about a female character, and may I add, as per usual, and it just, for me, it just allows these sort of stereotypes of women must be sexy, men must be strong or hard, or whatever you want to say. Hard, oh dear. And
as a result of
women being sexy, yeah. No, that women need to be sexy, and it sort of, for me, it just reinforces these stereotypes, and then people just sort of blindly agree with it. They don't know any different then, and you've got people in control and people in higher positions who I think probably do need to be a little bit more responsible about the way they say these things. But in order to what you said, Arjun, about unless he's got a grander scheme, it's kicking up a lot of controversy and a lot of publicity about this game.
Yeah. He has hinted as much. He said that once people know more about it, they'll understand and it'll be all okay. Which I don't know. It'll have to be something particularly striking for that to actually be true. But
I wanted to raise, because I was just reading up on some of the Metal Gear Solid characters. I remember playing Metal Gear Solid 1, and obviously there was Sniper Wolf.
Yeah.
So she was a boss character, and one of her things was saying that women soldiers were better than men. Like she said, 2/3 of the world's greatest assassins are women. Men can't finish what they start, and they're weak and stuff like that. So very kind of opposing point of view. Obviously, ultimately in that game, you end up killing her.
Yeah.
But it's like,
yeah, I mean,
you rarely hear that opinion being said so freely.
True.
In any context of any media.
But she was a bad character. So immediately, your desire at that point of the game is to overwhelm and control that woman who's airing views that you don't necessarily agree with. And whilst yes, they aren't viewed, and on the one hand you're like, oh yeah, it's a really strong female character, that then becomes nullified by the fact that you kill her, and her voice, she's silenced.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? She's silenced then, and it's like what she said doesn't matter. It sort of goes back to the whole thing that, I mean, if it was the other way around and it was the female protagonist rather than the antagonist, or an antagonist saying that, would it be as widely accepted?
But I think the thing about being a bad, being a villain in a game, in any context, is that there can be the idea is that someone, they can have their opinions, and they could altogether come from the idea of a villain having ideas that are generally considered yeah, that's okay, but then they just take it to the extremes or take it the wrong way and become villains. I mean, I think just to say that their opinion was existed and then they were killed makes it nullified isn't as big as saying as not having that opinion at all.
Yeah.
True.
So often in Metal Gear games, you get characters who are bad guys, but they tend to speak a lot of sense.
Yeah, they talk about the military-industrial complex. They talk about things that ultimately people would agree with. But the thing is that they're doing such like heinous things to prove their point that that they ultimately are the bad guys themselves.
Yeah, it's a bit of a trope in Metal Gear games where the bad guys will lecture you on something.
I think it's a trope in everything, really. Do they explain how they're going to kill you as well? Is that like, or is that just James?
Sometimes.
Is that just Bond? You see this laser, Mr. Bond?
Yeah. There's a few times when you get tied up, like C4 around you and stuff.
Yeah, there's that electrocution scene and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
You had to button bash in order to stay alive.
Yeah, has Metal Gear got a reputation for being above all of this? Is that why people are shocked?
Have any games got a reputation of being above all of it? The gaming industry doesn't have that reputation, really. I'm not saying there aren't games with positive female role models, but generally speaking, and again, I'm not saying this is absolute, they're very rare. Or if there is a female character, such as the Mass Effect games, it's secondary, or sort of like an afterthought to a male character, if there is an option anyway. Obviously, as far as options and stuff are concerned. But, there are very few games where there are strong female protagonists who, are just women rather than, Lara Croft. Obviously, Lara Croft is actually sort of the embodiment of a strong, intelligent woman. But they've had to temper that with... Maybe not in the new design, but with the original design, with sort of I like short shorts and and I've got big boobs.
That came to a point where the creator of the game, the creator of her, not the creator of the game, the person who designed Laura, kind of felt annoyed that was happening to them.
Yeah.
And wanted to avoid that from happening. And I know that was the case with the person who created Lara Croft. And I think what happens is it tends to become a bit of a design by committee situation where they need to kind of say what will ultimately get more hands-on controllers to play these games, what will get more... And I think that's one of the big problems. And do you think it's worth drawing a parallel with other mediums, other industries?
Oh, definitely.
I think for what video games has done, it's raised this conversation that you don't hear as often in many other mediums, despite there being, considerable.
Oh, definitely.
Considerable, not detractors, but considerable, guilty.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's across the board, really, just in visual media generally. And this overt and it is of women. It's the overt sexualization of women. But the overt sexualization, of women, can only mean that they're sort of being objectified. They're being made into something that they're to be looked at and not really thought of in any other way. And and I think that this particular character design has brought that up quite heavily. There was recently, I can't remember the name of the game. Oh, it was that, goodness me, what's the name of the game? The one with the witch had just the hugest breasts.
Oh, Dragon's Crown.
Thank you. Yeah. Did you say Bayonetta, Tash?
Yeah.
That's not what I was thinking about, but that's another one as well. Yes.
Dragon's Crown.
Dragon's Crown is the one I was talking about, and that was possibly the last one before Quiet in Metal Gear. With that, but that was. It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. It was. Yeah, you think it's painful to look at? Can you imagine? Can you just imagine Carrie Nye? She must have the sorest back ever. Check it out, guys. Dragon's Crown, and you'll see all the bloody arguments about it and all that kind of stuff. And that character design as well is genuinely possibly the most ridiculous thing you'll ever see. But possibly a close second to Bayonetta. Because I remember, Gurdeep, you showed me a bit of Bayonetta, and I played a little bit of it, and you were like, play it, kind of thing. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Because it was just
you just hated the character.
I hated the character design. I absolutely hated it. She's got high heels with guns on her shoes. Like, like they couldn't find a better.
I kind of like the idea of shoe guns.
Yeah,
Shoe guns are pretty cool.
Oh God.
a lot of people seem to think Bayonetta is like one of the better characters of like the current console generation.
She does have a sense of like control and like
Yeah.
kind of like the domination of enemies.
Yeah.
In that game.
Yeah.
But
I would guess the majority of people would be men and boys who enjoy the games and the character of Bayonetta, but I can't really say.
Having said all this about Quiet from Metal Gear Solid, and we've only really seen pictures of her at the moment.
That's
Do you
true.
think there is a way they can sort of bring it back with the character and make it
Well,
like
in this argument
for the series?
Yeah, well, I mean, this argument, I think context is the key. This argument that I had with this gentleman online, he obviously he was like, no, you can't censor art and all this kind of stuff. Video game is an art. If you want to change it, go in and change it. And I was like, it's the context of it. The context at the moment is that there have been images released of her, and there've been comments about, I want to encourage cosplay through this sexiness or this eroticism. But if he'd said, oh, well, we've designed this character because I can't think of an excuse. To be honest, I cannot think of an excuse why she would be dressed like that. But if there was a reason, and the context was there, like these people trying to make the context, oh, she's in the desert, so it's hot, so she has to wear less clothes. It's just a bit. I mean, that's actually the actual reverse is true. But I'm getting sidetracked. But because that context isn't there, that of course there is. I mean, for me anyway, I do think the design is in bad taste, and I don't think she needs to be dressed the way she is, just for the sake of it. But if they said, oh, there's a reason she wears those clothes, and it was a decent enough reason in the terms of the storyline, then I probably would be a bit more open to the idea. But at the moment, you're right, it is just pictures coupled with these remarks, and it's actually the remarks that are more sexist than the design, really, because we don't really know the full context of the design.
They also chose to foreground her character and release some of those designs above and beyond releasing those of any other character in the game.
Yeah.
Presumably because they thought, well, this is going to get a lot of attention or something. I don't know why, but there isn't a single other. It's got some attention. I mean, none of the other bosses in the game or any other character that I could think of has had like the release of their character art at this stage.
See, this is another thing that I've brought up, is the fact that it's again, for me personally anyway, the reason I find it sexist is because of the imbalance in male character designs. Is that, if there's a blog called Repair Her Armour, and if you're interested in this kind of thing, you should check it out. It's called, just search on Google for Repair Her Armour. And basically, it's like people suggesting they get your typical sort of, and it's not restricted to video games, sort of comic strips and animes and all sorts of things, but it's mostly video games of girls or of women who have obviously been squeezed into these ill-fitting, tiny, barely covering anything garments, and it's been passed off as sort of armour, basically. And this person then uses the magic of Photoshop and just keeps the characters quite sexy and really sort of busty and all the rest of it or whatever, but just covers them up a little bit, so there's not so much skin on show, basically. Yeah. But there was one image where I don't know what game it's from, but it was literally an image of two versions of the same character, essentially, a male version and a female version. And the male version is in this heavy gold sort of plate mail, basically. It's very ornate and adorned and all this kind of stuff. And then you've got the woman sitting next to him, and she's basically wearing Leia's chainmail bikini from Star Wars. And that's literally it. And I was just like, the difference is just massive. And that's where it becomes sexist. So for someone to deny that, that there is sexism in this industry and across visual media, it's just passive. It's a bit ignorant, to be honest. I find, that's not trying to insult anyone, but I find it very ignorant. People go, oh, well, it's not sexism. Well, how isn't it sexism? If there were loads of male characters parading around in their pants, maybe, but they're not. And that's the difference. And therein lies the thorn in my side, as it were.
I was just thinking back on the Metal Gear Solid series, and I remember Metal Gear Solid 2. Gertie, do you remember Metal Gear Solid 2?
Yep.
There's an entire sequence where you have to run around as as Raiden.
Yeah, I remember it very well.
In the complete buff.
He's completely naked. He's got his hands covering his crotch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was. Yeah.
That was a bit of. It was nudity that had a purpose as well.
Okay.
In terms of the plot of the game.
It also applied to the mechanics.
Yeah.
Like obviously you didn't have any weapons. You had nothing.
Yeah. You couldn't do anything that involved your hands, otherwise you'd have to show everyone his groin.
So there's a precedent then. That gives us hope that there's going to be some.
Yeah, definitely.
To be dressed like that.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with the guy who you've been arguing with about the fact that if you just full on say, well, no, get rid of this, it is kind of censorship.
But in the same way, you don't have to. You don't have to.
Put it all out in the open.
You should be showing that you shouldn't like it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, like for example, in Australia, they ban games just because of certain content. So that's the extreme example of we don't want this. We'll just ban it completely.
Yeah.
I guess people are trying to start a dialogue.
Yeah.
And having a dialogue with the developer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the best thing to do. I think there's. Yeah. I mean, like people will still try and make something that's visually appealing, but they will do it in a way that's considered quite gross. And like if you think about the way the movie industry has been running, like if you think in like the 60s and 70s and 80s, like they'll put out 18 films, but they'll know that to put in like just a bit of nudity because they know that will get in some people.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But obviously what ends up happening is people obviously kind of don't like that and they think it's kind of unnecessary because what does it add? What does it add in any way, shape or form to a movie or to a game or any other medium? But what it kind of does is it created a splinter of the movie industry, which is now, which is now what it is. But and I think it's like, do you want it to like be pushed out of the mainstream completely, and but that there'll be a pocket of this kind of terrible stuff that happens in the corner, which people will know about, or do you want, or like, or is the current way like you'd consider like the 60s and 70s of film to be?
Yeah, well,
I'm much. Sorry.
No, carry on. It's fine.
Well, I much prefer. Like when I'm playing a game, for example, the one that comes to mind most is The Witcher, the first Witcher game, which is a critically acclaimed role-playing game from a Polish developer. It's not a blockbuster game. At least at first, it was kind of a labour of love that they worked on really hard and made this incredible game. And the story of it is one of the strong points. You've got these options where you can really change the way the story plays out. But throughout the game, you have these little cards that you can collect. The way you collect these cards is by sleeping with various women in the game.
Oh God!
And I think there's like 60 or 70 cards you can collect. And in fairness, the character of The Witcher himself, he's supposed to be promiscuous. He's supposed to be, a stud. That's how he's written. But it gives you this incentive to like. Do these
flower women.
Well, yeah, there's that. I mean, you get these kind of moral options, and a lot of the bad ones are the ones that lead you to getting these cards. So you'll have to like talk to some villagers or something, and the option that sends you down the bad route is the one where you end up sleeping with the villager woman. Plus, it also did this thing where sometimes you wouldn't even have a named character who the Witcher would sleep with. It would just say villager.
Aww, woman.
Yeah, or it would just say, woman from village B. That sort of thing. And it was like an addition to the game. It was completely unnecessary. You didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was there, it was just there in the back of my mind. Like.
Well, this is the thing. Unfortunately, and it is the unfortunate reality that sex sells, but it mostly only really sells to men, doesn't really sell to women. And I mean, you can get into a massive conversation about how men and women are wired differently sexually and all that kind of crap, basically.
I need to disagree that sex doesn't sell to women, because it does. But it's just
not nearly. But I'm sorry, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying it doesn't, but by and large, I mean, like the media. I mean, what I mean is there's a huge difference in how many. How many sexualized media are aimed at women and how many are aimed at men, which to me would suggest anyway that far more men are drawn in by that kind of sales tactic than women. I'm not saying it doesn't sell to women.
If you're saying that men, I think because men are more visual, then maybe it's more apparent in the things that we would be consuming, like
that's what I meant. That's what I meant.
Video games, but whereas things like erotica or whatever, women are far
God, 50 Shades of Grey. Jesus Christ!
I think if you want to talk about erotic literature is where the female market.
True, that is true.
Those searching erotica go to.
Well, games that have like romance options, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I
50 Shades of Grey erotica, but
I call it trash personally.
Yeah,
but
people acknowledge that it's kind of trashy. Bit of titillation. So,
but I know a lot of women who are into that. I'm not saying that sex
does appeal to a lot of women, and probably more so than any other kind of like media focused on sex in the last 5 years.
Yeah, but I mean, even though yes, erotic literature sells better to women than I'm not saying that than it does to men, but I imagine that would appeal more to women than to men. Again, you have to bear in mind that the erotica deals with the feelings and that the emotions. Well, I say emotions. I'm presuming I don't read much erotica, or any, but it deals more with how everything feels and how everything is. Whereas, so there isn't really that kind of avenue in visual media, such as games and movies and music videos and things like that, to portray that, which is where that sort of, it's just trying to think, the different sort of sexualization, kind of the sex tactics between men and women, is that, on the face of it at any rate, is that women like to feel and they like to sort of be maybe more emotionally or at least mentally invested in something before they sort of get turned on, basically, which says to me it's less objectifying.
If there was an equivalent of the what is she called, Meryl thing, where you can go back again and again, eventually see her in the buff. I don't think I would have done the same thing at any point.
Exactly, And then obviously, because men by and large are more visually stimulated, it becomes very easy to kind of go, oh yeah, get her tits out, that's fine.
Yeah.
And that's where the thing is. I'm not saying that sex doesn't sell to women at all, but on that kind of in your face sort of like way boobs kind of thing, or way penis, if whatever floats your boat, you know what I mean? It primarily is aimed at men. How's that not sexist? That's my argument. I was like, how's that not sexist? Because at the end of the day, it's aimed primarily at men.
It's actually, I mean, if you think about it, it's sexist to both genders, because it makes men as
lumbering
the
idiots.
Target of just
if you like, because let's go back to Dragon's Crown, because I really liked Vanillaware games, like what the games that they had, Odin's Sphere and Muramasa Demon's Blade. I mean, they're very like really nicely drawn bits of kind of games, and they look really good and they play really well.
Yeah.
And like that didn't that kind of stuff from Dragon's Crown didn't exist in the previous two.
Yeah.
But like, I still want to play Dragon's Crown at some point, but I feel like a complete idiot if I want to pick it up, because I know everyone will be like, yeah, that's the one with the giant boobs in it.
That's the boob game.
That's the boob game.
I mean, it pisses me off as well, because I no more want to play like an action game like Metal Gear Solid and see Meryl's tits than I want to watch a David Attenborough documentary and see like a bomb flashing on the screen every 5 seconds.
Hang on, are we talking a human bum or like a baboon bum or something? I don't really understand in what context.
Any sort of titillating bomb.
Titillating bomb.
I had to stop playing Dragon Age on the PS3 because I think I took my PlayStation down for Christmas. And I was at parental home, and then all of a sudden, I can't remember the name of that character. The first main female character you come across was just so stupid. Yeah, Morrigan was so stupidly dressed that I was just like, I can't play this game anymore. I'm running out of games I can play on my PS3 at home during Christmas.
I'm at that stage as well now, where if a game does that, it really lowers my desire to play the game. And in fairness, that's not happened for a long time. And the games where it does happen, Mass Effect. Where literally bombs will get flashed on the screen quite regularly during normal dialogue. You kind of overlook it because the game itself gets beyond that, I think.
Yeah, it's just sort of like a really unnecessary lip service sometimes. It's like, well, we know there are a lot of guys who play there, so here's a butt for you, or here's some tit, bit of side boob, and it's just like, why? It doesn't add anything to it.
I think the weirdest part, especially in video games, is that like it can be just, if you think about it, like when it's done in film or in a music video, there's some kind of consensualness to it. Like a lady has gone, I understand I'm attractive, and yes, I understand like my attractiveness can bring bring
all the milkshake, the boys to the yard, as it were.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and so
milkshake
they'll be like,
yard.
I'll dress like that, whatever. And there are like worse points where that could go a bit out of hand and stuff.
Yeah.
But like in a game, it could just be a dude making a lady.
No, that's a good point.
It's kind of really gross if you think about it like that. It's just like I'm just gonna make a really attractive looking lady, and then I'm gonna. And then, maybe, obviously, then, and that kind of gets a bit weird.
Yeah, it's kind of been offensive in BioWare games as well, where they've gone to so much effort to make really well-rounded and well-written female characters, and then they're like, don't worry, she's still got a great rack.
Yeah. I'm going to say something controversial, which is that is this kind of an emerging something that's distinct between Western games and Japanese games?
Oh, interesting.
Well, because the couple of games we've mentioned, like Dragon's Crown, I think it is, and Metal Gear are Japanese games.
That's true.
There's been a bit of a strange kind of turnaround on that side of things, because you've got Dragon's Crown and you've got Metal Gear, and then you've got the new Suda51 game. Suda51? Yeah, his game is pretty gross.
Yeah, I've not heard many good things about that.
Killer is Dead.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, that would be I want to play another Suda51 game.
Yeah, he makes excellent games, really interesting and eccentric games.
And then this game is just kind of...
Oh god, it's got dating things in it, hasn't it?
It's not really dating things. I've seen
wait,
it, and
where's this going?
It's like you actually actively like it's not a dating, but it's like an ogling sim. Seriously.
Oh no. Okay.
It's almost like in Dead Rising. Dead Rising, if you took a shot of someone's cleavage, you'd get like tons of like photo points.
Oh my god, that's why.
Dead Rising.
It's pretty much like that. It's in the context of it, and it's just really, and like I don't ever want to play that game.
You know what? That's sort of stirring some vague memory. I'm pretty sure I read about a game. I think it was an online based, like a web based game. And it was a dating in inverted commas game. And I'm fairly sure, unless it's Leisure Suit Larry, I can't remember, but I know there is a game where you got points for like taking panty shots or cleavage shots. But that was the point of the game. So you got, basically you had to get as many women to go out with you, and obviously you were a male character, you weren't a female character. And you got extra points if you managed to like touch her or get a panty shot of her, or just weird things like that. And it's like, well, you can't do it. Well, I suppose, I mean, on the one hand you're like, oh well, you can't do it in real life, so here's a game just to allow you to live out all your perverted fantasies.
Yeah. And
talking about pervy Japanese games, we could probably go all day.
Yeah.
Well, Battle Raper was the best one I read.
The problem is that, like, there is a large market that produces that stuff in Japan.
Yeah.
there's a market that exists for that kind of thing.
Aren't we talking about?
And when we talk about games, we don't talk about like Hollywood games or Bollywood games or Japanese games as being like that distinct. We just talk about video games as a whole. Like you wouldn't lumber in all of Japanese, Korean cinema with Hollywood cinema at the same time and talk about films.
Yeah, of course.
But not very often anyway.
I think the games that do import, like, they've generally been safe. They've actually been censored in some cases. Especially in the early 90s and like coming to the present. But for some reason like the big game producers seem to want to add this layer, and it's a bit weird. But and especially Where I Saw Killer Is Dead is just so.
Yeah. It was enough to make me lose my interest instantly on that game. Actually.
I mean, I even ended up playing Lollipop Chainsaw. I rented it because I didn't want to like have that in my collection of games. But I wanted to play through it because I wanted to like still think that Suda 51 could still make a decent game, which was interesting. And I got through it. I thought it was an alright game, but like, it was still like, that wasn't so good. And like some unnecessary bits. But this feels like there's an entire like secondary element, like a large secondary element that is just so kind of like something I don't want to actively do.
Yeah.
But it seems like important in the entire process.
Well, I mean, in response to what you said about there seemed to be a big disparity between Western and Japanese games, maybe only in how obvious it is. Because I have to say that even in Western games, it's there, but it's actually, to be honest, it's actually much more sort of cloaked or veiled, if you will, which I think kind of almost makes it worse, really, because it sort of like puts it in so subtly that it's sort of like, oh yeah, that's normal, but it's just a bit like like Miranda's butt shots in Mass Effect, like the gratuitous butt shots, and she's got a really nice butt, but you didn't see any of the guy's butt shots. Like, why not?
I think you do.
Do you?
I mean,
as
maybe
much?
not like that.
Yeah, I was about to say, not quite the same as that, and that's what I'm saying.
I mean, in fairness, I wasn't really looking out for the other guy's butts, but
you were looking at Miranda's butts.
You can't avoid Miranda's butt.
You have to look.
It's like a car crash.
Can't look away.
In Western games, it can sometimes be a bit more undercover, and it's still there. Like, there's a character in Halo called Cortana. And she's gradually gotten more and more sexualized as the games have gone through the series.
Mass Effect ED goes from being sort of like just a voice to this sort of sex robot, doesn't she? Sort of like, look at me, I've got tits. And she's like, why? She didn't need to. She was fine as she was. I suppose. I mean, I think there was an element of sort of. Wasn't there an element of her sort of trying to discover how she used the body and all that kind of stuff? But it was a bit overt, the design. Again, I mean, to me, it's just that it seems that in a lot of visual media and also video games specifically, it's a lot to do with sort of the actual design, the visual design of the character doesn't necessarily correlate with the character design, like the story design, basically.
And I think it's something that games has to an extent, games have only really come into that field, say, over the past 8 years. I'd say the reason why is because before everyone was a one-dimensional character. But obviously now everyone is slowly, they're slowly starting to flesh out every character. And then when you see something as like kind of fan servicey, or not even just fan servicey, just kind of just a bit gross. It's just like, it's like that's when you start kind of going, okay, you've shown you can make more than a simple kind of like layered character, but you need to kind of make that work across the board.
Excuse me.
I think as well, we always notice the worst characters.
Yeah.
Like, we always notice the worst examples of sexualized female characters in games, but the ones that are done well, we don't often pick them out because, they just kind of work.
Yeah, the idea is that what happens is eventually they're seamless.
Yeah.
And so they don't get
They
put
don't need to be
into your
remarkable.
memory. Yeah, like like if you walk down the high street and one person bumps into you, you're not going to remember the faces of everyone else.
Yeah,
you're only going to remember the person that bumps into you, and like maybe give you an evil look. You're not.
I don't know. I mean, I still have to argue the fact that it's just not enough. It's never enough, or it never seems to be enough for a female character to be sort of a good character or a well-rounded character, because she can't be well-rounded unless she's got an impressive rack or a bottom that you can't not put in the screen, like in front of your face constantly.
But then again, if you think about like the movie industry, the television industry, the thing is that actors and actresses are like they may be acting as fully well-layered people, but they
have a certain look. Yeah, of course.
But they're always going to be attractive people.
That's true. But I mean, this is
the argument that it's fantasy.
Yeah, but I mean,
I don't think I'd.
But then, I don't. Yeah, there is the argument it's fantasy, but it's just like it's a bit of a weak argument, really, because I mean, like, I can't.
It's like you shouldn't be only allowed to have one fantasy that's being hot.
Yeah, there you go. There's no variety. It's like all the women are perfect, but mind you, a lot of the men are as well. But there's so much more variety within male character design than there is in female character design. It is changing. I have to admit, it is changing, but it seems to be sort of dragging behind the rest of visual media specifically. Just still seems to be dragging behind everything else. Women burn their bras and all that kind of stuff, but it seemed to be okay for this kind of overtly sexualized advertising, and it's usually women. It's usually women.
Yeah, and I think that. Sorry.
No. I tend to sort of make noises and then not carry on.
and then I think and I think that another big concern is that games, obviously they're moving into the mainstream, but games like these AAA blockbuster games still don't capture the audience of people who consider the entire games industry. So obviously there are female gamers and they play a wide range of games. But because those games haven't received a mainstream where a large proportion of people see it, regardless of demographics, it doesn't capture people's attention as much.
Yeah.
And I think that's why action films don't tend to have the random spotty bit of stupid nudity.
No, that's true. I mean, I think games have improved, but
Definitely.
Then there's stuff like the Metal Gear costume that make you think it's gone backwards. But that's the reason it's caused so much anger and debate is because it's an outlier. It's not it's not the common thing anymore.
And what I think is you don't hear many movie arguments about films being sexist. You just hear the entire movie industry being sexist. You hear this film has got some really gross, disgusting stuff in it, and it's kind of it's out of the blue, and you don't really want to know about it. It just gets marked down as being that's really kind of wrong.
Yeah.
But somehow I think the great thing about the video games is that the community it creates and the opinions that it brings together all in one big go somehow creates these discourses that just doesn't exist in the movie industry or any other industry really. There'll be passing thoughts on what's happening in the movie industry.
It's because games are interactive.
And every time a Bond film comes out, there aren't as many people complaining about there's always a Bond girl.
Yeah.
Oh, but everyone kicked off a fuss when there was that little tiny scene where Bond sort of intimated that he may have had a gay experience.
Yeah.
And it was oh, you can't make Bond gay. I was just why not?
But I think that's another kind of that's another issue of.
That's an argument for another day.
Yeah, that's an acceptance argument rather than a a sexism argument.
Oh well.
And I feel like I think that's what makes video games really great at this point in time. People are discussing and arguing about what games should be, and the thing is weird because like no one in film is going, this is what films should be.
Yeah.
This is what films should strive to attain, and it's really weird that video games can do that. I don't know if that's a great thing because video games obviously like the creators should have some like idea of going, I want to do this. It may be a bit backwards to include
some people
this mechanic.
Yeah.
Someone says it may be backward to include this mechanic, but I really like this mechanic and I want to make this game.
Yeah.
You don't hear many filmmakers going, oh yeah, I really like, well, actually no, you do. The artist, someone decides to make a silent film.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a major success. But the idea is that like somehow video games has managed to go like, as an industry, how do we improve ourselves? They gather together and are like, how do we do this?
Yeah.
And that is something you don't see.
You're right. You're completely right. Yeah.
You don't hear musicians all coming to like South by Southwest or something and going, right, how do we want music to improve for the future?
Yeah, I think we're still at the stage where we need to be calling this stuff out, and then it's great that the video game industry can respond and sort of maybe try and push the boundaries a bit and make female characters that are a bit more layered and have other things going for them than what they actually look like.
Boobs
and bums.
Boobs and bums.
I think I don't know. I'm guessing everyone's played BioShock Infinite.
Yes.
Possibly.
She was a really good character, but I want to say something, but it's spoiler territory.
I can't talk about spoilers, but there were problems with some parts of her character, but overall they worked really hard to make her a kind of a different sort of character than what people used to seeing.
They couldn't really. The reason I want to say so, I'm not going to say specifics, but the relationship she had with your protagonist meant that you couldn't really sexualize her. If that relationship didn't exist, would they have gone down the sexualization route or not? Don't know.
Well, that's kind of a big spoiler, but anyway.
It's not that big a spoiler. I
know what it is, but it's
you can kind of. There's a trailer for the new expansion for BioShock Infinite where it looks like they're going to do some interesting stuff with that. So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. But I think that looks like we're about ready to round up. I think.
So, shall we do like last week on a scale out of 10? What do we think of sexism?
I hate sexism and all its foibles. Is it
better or worse than Cookie Clicker?
It's definitely worse than Cookie Clicker.
Yes.
Something better. Cookie Clicker.
But I mean, if we really wanted to go down the rating route, we could rate Quiet's costume. On a personal scale, what do you think? I'm not actually going to be serious.
Scale of
suggesting
what to what?
10.
Well, but what does the 10 mean?
10 means you love it. And you love boobs.
Speaking as a fashion expert,
be honest.
You love it.
Well, I'm gonna say it depends on the magical reasons for her wearing it, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Well, at this stage of time, we don't have those. That's the problem. Yeah.
I am extremely discomforted by its existence. Proved happily wrong.
I'll tell you what bothers me more, right? The two things that bother me more than the fact that she's wearing them is the fact that her tights are rank and her thong is horrible as well. Just I was like, if he said, "Oh yeah, sexy," and I'm like, "It's not even that sexy."
Well, I mean, she's in a combat situation, so there's a lack of thongs. And she's just gone with what she could find.
Those fishnets are a bit broken because, obviously crawling in the dirt will probably create tears.
Oh, I'd be impressed if she's crafted her costume out of scrub that she found in the desert. That would be quite good.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
that would be that could be
Maybe she was because she's mute as well. I don't know whether you know that. So maybe she was taken into the desert. Maybe she was sort of, I don't know, left there with no clothes in a horrible situation. The shock has left her mute, and she's had to find or maybe even kill people so she can dress herself. That would be pretty good.
That sounds interesting. I wouldn't put that past like a concept of what Kojima could make out of the game.
I think I might just turn around my entire argument on this whole sexism thing if that ended up being the storyline. That would be amazing.
You should write to him. I think you should rewrite the story to create this character.
Late rewrite.
She had to fight for her clothes. Right, on that note, I think we're going to say goodbye. So, bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Sex is bad.
Yay.
Boobs.
Not yay. Yay.
Boobs.
I want to play games in front of my parents, not.
That was fun.